Hello, I am the Ancient Ninja, and this is the Nexus of Truth. Let's get pointy. Today's subject is about whether or not Jesus ever really left. Now, if you're one of those people that began watching this video and you're already skeptical whether or not Jesus existed, this video is not for you. You need to go do your own research. Jesus of Nazareth absolutely existed. There's many speculations around the validity of who he was, but that's not what this video is about. It is about my theories in terms of all of the things that I've deciphered reading ancient text and kind of what I think about it. So I want to shift the subject to my theory about Jesus and how I believe Jesus and the Sun God are one and the same. Now, that doesn't mean that Jesus is the Sun. It means Jesus is of the Sun. So the Sun holds a very important meaning in life. And that's the way that a lot of these spiritual things work now and how they're manifesting. You know, back in ancient times, during our ancestral times, a lot of the things that we talk about were actually physically manifesting in front of them. Now, most of it is metaphorical. So that's why when you read these ancient texts, you think about these things, you really have to have critical thinking and an open mind in terms of understanding them, because a lot of these things have multiple meanings. So with that in mind, I want to discuss why I believe Jesus and the Sun God are one and the same, and how Jesus and the sun that shines in our sky have a relation. So throughout history, many civilizations worship the Sun God, and tons of historians will tell you, you know, we really don't know why. We don't know why they had such an obsession with the sun, other than the fact that, you know, at the time it was shining in the sky. And many people can say, oh, well, they were just trying to figure out something to worship, whatever. Well, back in ancient times, our ancestors, they were a lot smarter than us in a lot of these civilizations that were built. You know, now, although we have technology and many things, many people are not intelligent. So the idea that they just worshiped the sun in the sky because it was shining, I think doesn't give it enough justice, and there's perhaps some other things that they were seeing that we weren't. So Stonehenge and the Mayan pyramids are both believed to be attempts to understand the sun. They could also be other things, portals, things like that, but they all have clear indications that the way they were built, the way they were constructed, was around the way the sun worked. When we look back in Egyptian times, we actually know of Ra and Horus. Now, Horus, if you look into the story of Horus had a very similar story to Jesus. Many people have said, oh, well, I think that his story was stolen from Horus, which when it comes to history and the way things work, especially in ancient texts, nothing is stolen. It's just life complements itself in that way. It's the same as the way art we see manifested in real life and the way it works. That's just how the divine operates. So it's not often that anything's stolen, it's just that history does in fact repeat itself. So the story of Horus is very interesting. If you care to look at it, I'll put some links below in the description so you can kind of see the similarities. Now, in the end, Horus actually merged with Ra, the sun god. That's right, Ra is the sun god. And after which he dies and is reborn every day as the sun rises. And that's the story of Horus and Ra, which is why they both represent two sides of the same face, right? So when you look at that, you think, okay, Horus, who has a similar story to Jesus, merged with the sun god. Now, when we get into later in this video about what happened after Jesus left, it kind of symbolizes the way Horus almost merged with the sun god and died. First, though, I'm going to read some verses from biblical ancient texts that also describe Jesus in a way that could be interpreted in that manner. So one of them is when Jesus is said to return. He has 7 stars in a mouth, a sharp, long, 2-edged sword, like the sun. this is pretty literal, right? It's describing him as the sun, putting it, and you think back to elementary school and you drew the sun, how it was like up and down, all pointy, things like that. And the way we look at the sun, it's fiery. So that's a verse that kind of puts it into literal forms and says, okay, Jesus coming back, it clearly says right here, like the sun. It says in the Bible, whoever believes in the Son has eternal life. Whoever does not obey the Son shall not see life, but the wrath of God remains on him. Now, this was spelled S-O-N, as in son, son of man, son of God. When deciphering these ancient texts, like I said earlier, many things have multiple meanings. So spelling isn't necessarily the end-all be-all. Just because something isn't spelled correctly doesn't mean it doesn't mean that. In fact, ancient text, many of those things, the words aren't spelled correctly. Our obsession with spelling today and the way things are spelled is just out of a need to be egotistical and correct, because often spelling isn't a big deal in many things. That's why also many gods go by many names. Now, when you break down this quote, whoever believes in the sun has eternal life. The sun does make you healthier. Getting sunlight, everything needs sun and water. So the sun is life force. Disobeying the sun, in terms of going against your natural clock, not sleeping when you're supposed to, not taking the measures that you need to in the sun, like use your common sense, it could hurt you. It could even kill you. Skin cancer does exist. That's not saying to wear sunscreen. That's saying to be healthy and to be smart with how often you're in the sun, because though it does give you life, everything has a negative and a positive. So too much laying out in the sun, you're still human, you're still susceptible to things, you got to be careful. And if you're not sleeping at the right time, you're staying up, you're disobeying your internal clock, it could give you bad luck, it could make your life even harder. I mean, I know many people who, if they just got like a better sleep pattern, it would drastically improve their life. So in the Bible, when it talks about Jesus returning, behold, he is coming with the clouds, and every eye will see him, even those who pierced him. And all the tribes of earth will wail on account of him. He's coming with the clouds. What's something in the sky that comes with the clouds? The sun. And every eye will see him. What is something in the sky everyone can see at the same time? The sun. All right? And even if you're like, well, what about different times of day? Like it's night in some places and it's day in others. The sun and the moon are still in the sky at that time. Okay? They don't go away. So when thinking of that, you think, okay, it described him as having long two-edged swords like the sun. He's coming with the clouds. Just a couple things that you can take from biblical texts that really kind of break it down for you in terms of describing Jesus in the same way it describes the sun. Now, when it gets into many things with religion of astrology and things like that, it starts to get really interesting. So one of the very first religions was astrology, essentially. Your worship of the sun, the moon, the stars, those things. Now, it says clearly in the Bible, the person that has gone and served other gods and worshipped them, or the sun, or the moon, or any host of heaven, which I have forbidden. Hear that? Or the sun, or the moon, or any host of heaven. So in this text, it's implying that the sun and the moon is a host of heaven, saying anyone that has gone and served or worshipped them, I have forbidden. So it states clearly here that God does not want you to worship the sun, which, because you look back in ancient civilizations, and when they worshiped the sun, it was done in a very toxic manner. I mean, they were killing people and sacrificing them to the sun god. And people think, well, if Jesus and the sun god are the same, why would Jesus want sacrifices? Jesus doesn't. It says very clearly, do not worship the sun or the moon. Why? Because these things will turn you evil. It will make you start doing things that you don't need to do. Don't worship them. So it states very clear there that the sun holds gods, and it is not a god or any host of heaven. So the sun isn't Jesus. The sun is of Jesus. It has something to do with the way that works, right? And those who have chosen to worship it, it never works out for them, and it ends up being, quite the detriment to their society and civilization. So thinking about that, you look at astrology. Jesus is the center of all, right? The sun is the center of all. God gave his only son, one son, our universe. Jesus had 12 disciples. The sun goes through 12 constellations. Now there is one constellation that's forgotten, and I talk about this all the time, Ophiuchus, the serpent man. That is a 13 forgotten constellation. So what could that mean in terms of 13 disciples? Well, that's easy. Judas was replaced with Saint Matthias after Judas betrayed Jesus. So there are 13 disciples, but only 12 that Jesus claims, just like the 12 that we claim. And that could perhaps be why we've forgotten Ophiuchus, who ironically is the serpent man. I mean, these things add up. It's kind of interesting how that makes sense. So you look at that and you're like, okay, now Jesus, the sun, is the center of which they have to travel around. Now, the December 25th, which is the birth date, but it's not the actual birth date, it's the birth sequence, has been used by countless gods. It's been, depicted in many ancient texts. The 3 stars, or the 3 kings that make up Orion's belt, they were called that in ancient times. These stars align so that they follow every year on December 25th to the point of sunrise, right? On December 22nd, the sun gets to its lowest point in the sky. So from December 22nd to 25th, the sun stops moving, and it stops for 3 days. Hence, the 3 days that Jesus died, right? And so then on December 25th, it moves 1 inch north, and that is the beginning of warmer days. Then in Easter, and when Easter comes, that's when the sun finally overpowers the dark and the days are longer, which is why our time changes and things like that. So when you look at these dates and the way that it correlates with the way that Jesus operates, it makes a lot of sense in correlation with the way the sun works. And the sun's reflection on water, Jesus walking on water, right? There's many things that kind of add up. And like I said, when you're thinking of these ancient texts and you're putting these things together, you have to really use your critical thinking for it to make sense. Jesus referred to himself as the Son of Man. Jesus never actually said, I'm the Son of God. He was asked, are you the Son of God? And he said, yes. And then he called himself the Son, or the Son of Man. And many disciples all account for when Jesus left, after he had risen, there was a eclipse for 3 hours. It's called the eclipse of the crucifixion, an eclipse for 3 hours. So Jesus left, and there was an eclipse. It was dark. This would correlate with Jesus being of the sun being the host of Jesus. And in the Bible, it clearly states Jesus will return from a sky of fire. He will come with the clouds, just like we said earlier. So all of these things kind of put together, when you think about it, it leads one to believe that perhaps Jesus never left. The sun and Jesus are one of the same. And shining in the sky above us at all times, watching over us, is the Son of Man. Now, if you're thinking this, so you're saying like Jesus is like the sun? Keep understanding Jesus is not the sun. Jesus is of the sun. The host, the sun is a symbolic host of Jesus. And that's why it's so bright and beautiful and wonderful. Now, this would really describe, when we start getting into political things, the reason that they want to block out the sun. The reason that climate change, which used to be global warming, is so talked about. They want you to think the sun is bad, the sun's hot, the sun's going to destroy us. I mean, how many things have you guys heard about the sun in terms of the sun's going to destroy us, it's going to catch the planet on fire, we need to block out the sun's bad for you, use sunscreen. They want you to constantly shield yourself from the rays of the sun. And we understand that the inorganic ones, the way they operate is backwards, opposite of what should be done. right? Because they don't have our best interest in mind. So if they're telling you the sun's going to hurt you, the sun this and that, when we know the sun gives life, everlasting life, like the Son of Man, you really start to understand that perhaps they're trying to keep the sun out of the way. They're trying to block the sun, not only because they want to usher in some fake things, which I'll talk about in some more of my videos, and kind of give you my idea on the things that they're trying to do. But it helps you understand that perhaps those in power, the inorganic ones, know that the sun holds a symbolic meaning for the Son of God, and that it holds more power than just being a burning star in the sky. Because you see, that's what they try to tell you, that the sun's just a burning ball of fire in the sky and all of these things. And I don't buy it, because I believe that everything that exists around us is a representation of something of the divine. It all has meaning, it all has purpose, and the sun is the center of many of these things, right? Sun gazing is one of those things that can help you open your mind, and I mean, it just has so many incredible uses, and that is why I believe that Jesus never left, and that we should start understanding that perhaps the sun god and Jesus and the sun might all be one and the same. So don't fear the sun, don't be scared of it, be smart about it, but don't let anyone fool you into thinking that we need to block out the sun. Truth be told, I don't think we can anyways, if we tried. Alright guys, well, that is all for today. It's a little longer video than I normally do. I try to keep them rather short because I know that it helps you guys keep up with my mind and many of the things that I say. So leave some comments, tell me what you think, tell me how you're seeing it. Be sure to like and subscribe, and as always, keep it pointy.